I speak to the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Or you can go with us. Our reading today is from the Passion narrative of chapter 18 and 19 in the Gospel of John. And as you all know, because you're all such many and knowledgeable Episcopalians, that the Gospel of John Passion reading is our Good Friday reading. And so what we have here today is we have 5 short verses taken out of the middle of that whole long Passion reading. And they're the 5 verses that deal with Jesus coming before Pilate and the trial of Jesus before Pilate. And they are, to say the least, they are in some ways a very simple, guidingly simple on a superficial level. But when you really pull this reading apart, what you see is that Jesus is doing a lot of stuff here in a few short verses. And he's doing stuff that needs to get done. And so what we need to do is kind of figure out what it is that Jesus is doing and how this makes an impact on who we are here today. So the first thing to understand is this. In the 5 verses that come before our reading today, we have the authorities, the religious authorities, coming to Pilate, and they say, and then so what happens is they bring Pilate Jesus, but they do not go inside the Roman headquarters. Pilate has to come inside because they don't want to be defiled. And so they bring Pilate Jesus, and so what Pilate says to them is, well, why have you brought him to me? What are the charges here? What's going on? And in verse 29, what the religious authorities say is, we have arrested him, and so you need to try him. They give Jesus no reason at all why they have brought Jesus to Pilate to be tried. And so, in response, what Pilate says is, well, just try him according to your own religious law, and let that be that. I'm sure you will all find some amicable end to this whole thing. And so, in response, what they say to Pilate is, we cannot try him because under our own law, we're not allowed to kill anyone, which gives you an insight to what their end point here is, which is we're not interested in giving him a fine or putting him in prison. We're interested in death, and that's all we're interested in. And so, in response, basically, Pilate receives Jesus, and then we get this curious little parenthetical right before our reading, and it says, all of this happened because Jesus had foretold this, and so what John tells us is this stuff needs to happen. It needs to happen. This is not an optional thing. This is a needs to happen in order for Jesus' ministry to be fulfilled. And what we have to understand today is what needs to be fulfilled. What are the conditions of Jesus coming before Pilate that need to be fulfilled? Now, ostensibly, the first reason is obvious. Jesus, throughout the whole Gospel of John and all the other 3 Gospels, has said one very consistent thing. I must go to Jerusalem, and I must be tried and found guilty and die on a cross publicly and be raised from the dead on the 3rd day. So what we know is this. Jesus needs to be crucified. But the problem is, and it is a problem, the problem is this. Pilate is not just allowed to crucify anybody he wants. Really, he's a man under the authority of Caesar. And even Caesar nominally has laws to follow that can't be abused. And so Pilate, in asking the religious authorities, and is saying, what are we trying him for? What's going on, right? And so Pilate, in some ways, you might say, is the guy most in the dark here. He doesn't really know what's going on between Jesus and the religious authorities. He's not quite sure if Jesus poses any threat to him because, well, quite frankly, Jesus hasn't done or said anything explicitly against Caesar yet, or Pilate. And so, as Jesus comes before Pilate, Pilate says this really curious thing, and it's this: are you the king of the Jews? Now, you might say that in some ways this is a very simple question, but it's not. See, what Pilate is saying is this: I need some reason for you to actually be here. I need there to be a cause for this trial. In other words, what Pilate is saying to Jesus is, I know you're standing as a defendant before me, but I also need you to, in some ways, write up the accusation against yourself, all right? So, in some ways, I need you to be the prosecutor and the defendant all at the same time, right? Because Pilate doesn't actually know why Jesus is being brought before him, because the religious authorities would not tell him why. And so he asked him this question: are you the king of the Jews? Now, for most of us, if somebody poses us that question, we receive it as a simple yes or no question. Yes, Pilate, I am the king of the Jews. Or no, Pilate, I am not the king of the Jews. The problem is you can't answer this question with a yes or a no, and we're going to find out that this is a more complicated and nuanced question. Now, here's part of why Jesus is in front of Pilate. And the first part is this, is that Jesus has to, in some ways, not pose a threat to Pilate, and yet cannot deny that which is actually true. So when Pilate asks the question, he knows that 99 out of 100 people are going to say what is. What are most people going to say? Right, John, what are they going to say? Hell no, not me. Not me at all. I'll see you later. I'll see you later. Right? And there might be one other person who says, yeah, I'm a revolutionary, right? And I came here to stick my finger in your eye, and I am publicly going to make, in some ways, an aggressive move against you, Pilate, right? So maybe there's some Jewish zealot, revolutionary who's going to come before Pilate and say, yes, I am, and I despise all the power of Caesar. But Jesus does not play that way. So what he says to Pilate in return isn't, yes, I'm the king of the Jews, or no, I'm not the king of the Jews, is this: are you saying that because of yourself, or do you ask that because of what somebody else has said to you? Right? So Jesus is saying this, and really the first part of the question, and this is fantastic, is this question you have coming out of yourself? Right? That's this really neat way of saying, is this question coming out of yourself? In other words, what Jesus wants to know first and foremost is this: are you having an authentic experience with me? Is this where this question is coming from? Are you and I actually going to get down to the brass tacks of who we really are? Is that where this question is coming from? Or is this just another kind of fake question? Right? And this is really important, because what Jesus is pointing out this to Pilate is this: any question where the people who are accusing somebody of something are afraid Good Friday said it many different ways, right? Is he ignorant? Is he guilty? Is he powerful? What is he, right? In this question, I am not a Jew, am I? But you see, what Jesus was actually asking wasn't a Jewish question. It was just a question that people ask one another. Are we going to be real here or not? Are we going to play on the fake field or the real field? What do you want, Pilate? Because we can do this however you like. See, Pilate doesn't actually know what's going on here. And of course, Jesus, from the beginning of the gospel, we find out, knows that his mission ends on the cross. Nobody knows better about why Jesus is actually before Pilate. Now, a little bit of a discursus on Pilate and Caesar. And it goes like this. The conceit about Roman power is this. Behind door number one is this choice you all have. And it's this. You can bow down to Roman power, become citizens of Rome, pay your taxes, and get along with everybody else. Or you can have door number two. Door number two looks like this. We'll kill you all, and we'll take your women and children and enslave them. Which door would you like? Right? Now, this conceit actually is more complicated than you actually might think. And it goes like this. Not only is the whole agency of Caesar and the Roman Empire built on the threat of violence, right? You will do this or else. But there's another component to it too. Not only will you recognize the sword, but you will be afraid of the sword. And you would do what you do because not only we ask you, but because you are afraid of our sword. And what Jesus is doing standing before him is, I don't care about your sword. And I really don't. I don't care whether you kill me or you don't kill me. I didn't come here to try and get out of being killed by your swords. I also didn't come here to avoid you. I came here to confront the central problem. Now, just as we said that the power of Caesar and the agency of Caesar relies on violence and the threat of violence and fear in the people who that violence is directed towards, there's a little small caveat also, and it is this. When Caesar acknowledges that he must use power to get you to do what he wants you to do, the flip side of that is he's afraid you might take his power. So, the threat and the fear that Caesar emboldens in other people is also, in fact, the very thing that motivates Caesar himself and Pilate, which is, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of you, and I'm afraid of you, and I'm afraid of anybody else. And this is part of what Jesus is pointing out. There is no real kingship that is motivated by threatening others to have fear, and which is itself motivated by the one threatening having fear of the other. That is a sham, and that is an outcome of the fall and all of the sinfulness of humanity. If you want that kingship, fine. But part of what Jesus is telling Caesar is, I'm not coming here representing more fear in the world. Caesar has nothing to fear from me, and yet, as we will find out, everything to fear from me. Now, in response to, I am not a Jew, am I? right before you so you know that everything I testify to, I give up with my body. And what Jesus is saying in this is profound. The kingdom of God works like this. The king gives up his very being so that others might be loved and forgiven and healed, so that others might have life. You represent the kingdom where others might die, so that Caesar might stay in power and have life. But a real king, a real kingdom, places the subjects who have no power in front of the king. Now, it gets even better. What Jesus is also saying is this. All that you represent, Caesar, all that you represent is empty in vain. Every claim you make about the world and every claim you make about your power are empty and broken and cause more of the world's problems. The problem for Pilate is this. In order to see Jesus as the king, you have to let go of the power and the pride and the authority of the world and humble yourself before the one who gives himself up. Truth, you all know this, only comes wrapped in flesh. If somebody tells you to do something, but they don't actually do it, they're lying to you. And we call those hypocrites. And we all participate. In response to Jesus' statement, we know that one verse that is left off the end of this reading. In response to saying that he came to testify to the truth, Molly, what is Pilate's answer?
What is truth?
What is truth? Right. And what Jesus is saying is truth is right in front of you in the flesh. But you have to humble yourself if you are to receive truth. Truth is not just words, truth isn't ideas, truth isn't titles,